You can actually bring the suit, but whether or not you can be successful is the issue.
Okay.
Why can't one be successful?
Because the court would have to look at certain instances to see whether or not you should be given judgment.
Okay, let's say for instance, I know this is happening across the country. People have had their gadgets being faulty or even just spoiling because of the erratic power supply. 1 minute your lights are on, the next minute it's gone off, and then your either your blender, your fridge, and various appliances just go faulty, or they stop working altogether. Can we blame the ECG, or can't we blame the ECG for that?
Whether we can blame the ECG or not depends on several circumstances. One, we can blame the ECG where we can establish that the ECG has been negligent in its service delivery. If we cannot establish that the ECG has been negligent, then we cannot blame the ECG.
And how can we establish that the ECG has been negligent? I mean, isn't it obvious to all of us? We have paid money for power, for electricity.
Yeah.
They have collected our monies. We still keep paying these monies. Month in, month out, we are paying our electricity bills, and we expect to get power, and we are not getting it, or we are getting erratic supply of power. So isn't there some negligence somewhere on the part of ECG?
Not necessarily, because there are several there's several producing chain in the service delivery. We have the manufacturer of the power, we have the distributor of the power, and we also have the wholesaler and the retailer of the power. Okay. So to be able to establish negligence, you must be able to attribute some fault to ECG.
Okay.
So an example, if for example a cable was broken, let's say by a truck,
right,
that is not a fault of the ECG, so you cannot claim for that. But if you can establish that there were all other surrounding circumstances are non-existent, and the only reason for the damage is because ECG has been negligent, or that it is because of their fault.
Okay, we don't know any of these things. All we know is that we expect electricity, and the electricity is not coming, it's not there, or when it comes it just goes off and it comes on, and the pressure is just making our things go bad. So in this case, if we were to come to you and say we want to sue ECG, how would you go about it, and how would you be able to get a favorable judgment for us?
Okay, the first thing the court would look at, there's a general principle that the ECG is not it doesn't guarantee continuous service. So there is no expectation that service would be continuous.
Is that what the ECG says?
That's not what the ECG says. There's not a lot of litigation in that area in Ghana. But if you look at the jurisdictions where there has been a lot of litigation on, the law principles usually state that as a general principle, the ECG it's not an insurer of continuous service, and it is not also an insurer of gadgets. So
this is in other jurisdictions.
This is in other jurisdictions. So if you look at it, you must be able to ascertain whether or not there was something wrong, or whether or not somebody did something wrong. If you are able to establish that link between the wrong the person did and the fact that your gadget has spoiled as a result of that wrong, then yes, you can claim. So if you were to come to me, for example, I would first have to look at the facts to see whether I can find the fault on the part of ECG, and then if I find the fault, I can establish the link between the fault and the damage, and then I can claim a legal relief for that purpose.
Wow, is there a lot of cases in the courts with regards to this issue?
Unfortunately,
has anybody ever taken on the ECG?
Unfortunately, in Ghana, it's almost non-existent.
Well, why is it so? Is it that we don't know that we can, or like you said, whether or not you get a favorable judgment is the issue?
I think it is both. Most people don't know that we can, but even for those who know that we can, you look at whether or not you will be able to make a convincing case in the court. Because even apart from that, there are other things.
Do we need to actually convince these judges? I mean, the courts can't take judicial notice of the fact that we are getting erratic power supply. I mean, I'm sure it affects them in their homes as well. So how much evidence do we need to bring to the courts to be able to establish that indeed ECG is not living up to the expectation?
Yes, there is enough evidence that we have erratic supply, but the question is it the fault of the ECG that we are having erratic power supply?
How is that our concern? Are we supposed to bother ourselves with that? All we know is that we expect them to deliver.
If you want to sue them, then you have to. If you want to sue them, yes, because ECG, they are entitled to make a deal. You can join all the suppliers, the power suppliers to the action.
Okay.
But if you single out only ECG, you have to establish. Yes, they will have a defense.
Right. A direct link between ECG and whatever.
Exactly.
Right. What about the PURC? What is their role in all of this?
Their role is to be able to oversee and protect our rights to quality of service. So the PURC should be able to regulate the various power suppliers to see see whether or not they are meeting.
So then it's possible for even PURC to take up the ECG and all these other suppliers on our behalf in a kind of a class action.
It's possible for the PURC, if they are able to establish that the other producers have not been meeting certain set standards, it is possible for them to bring action or to even join us in bringing an action against the
What kind of compensation can one expect if they do get a favorable judgment in such an action?
The loss that has occurred. So if, for example, gadgets were spoiled as a result of the fault,
you have to replace those gadgets, or would they have to give it to you in monetary compensation?
Could be either, most likely in monetary compensation.
What about maybe future loss or future earnings? Maybe because of this you lost so and so amount of business or monies that you would have gotten within that time frame. Can you ask for such relief?
Unfortunately, no. In other jurisdictions that they have been suing, they say that the ECG is not an issue. Then you file the writ in court, then the case will take its normal course in court, just like any other case.
Anybody at all can bring that. It doesn't matter how small, whether it's your refrigerator or it's your microwave or it's your cooker or whatever. You can bring an action.
You can bring an action. It doesn't matter. It's just you have suffered the damage. The only condition is that you have suffered some form of damage. Once you have suffered damage, you can bring an action. It doesn't matter how small the damage is or how big the damage is.
Would you advise people to start? Do you think it's time that we took a stand and started bringing such actions against ECG? Do you think that they are relaxed because they are not seeing such actions in court?
I agree that we should be able to bring a lot of actions, or people should take the initiative to bring actions. If it will also help us to build our law in that sector, and then it also serves as a guide to the power producers that somebody can take them up if they do not do the right thing. Right. So yes, it is good to.
Right. But also on the flip side, do you think that judges can also take judicial notice of the fact that, we know that they are not doing this on purpose. We all know that ECG is not doing, it's just not possible to give us the power that we require at the moment. So is it possible for the judges to also take judicial notice of the fact that this is the current situation in the country? There isn't much that it's not ECG's fault or the other provider's fault. There's just nothing that can be done at this moment in time. This is what the country is facing.
It is debatable.
Because of that, you won't get any reliefs or compensation.
Okay, it's debatable whether or not the judges can take judicial notice, because although the issue is much reported in the media and all that, I am not sure that the judges have seen the dam. They have gone through the processes and then they are competent enough to take judicial notice that we are satisfied that this is what has really happened.
That's what the president is telling us. That's what people who matter. That's what the minister in charge is telling us. The people who matter, this is what they are telling us. So are we saying that we don't believe them? If judges can't take judicial notice of the fact, then it means that the people in charge are lying to us.
Well, it is not about whether or not they are lying to us, but it is about facts. So the judges should be able to be satisfied that this is a fact. But on the basis of belief, no, the judges cannot take judicial notice just because they believe whoever is telling us the story. They are not entitled to.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Mrs. Clara Bieri Kasati is a legal practitioner and also a law lecturer. She joined us this morning to talk about taking on the ECG, and yes, she says it is possible. So you may just want to see a lawyer if you are suffering any kind of loss or damages. Right. This has been the Chamber here on New Day.